Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to wait a couple seconds to let people get on here, and then we'll get started. Thanks for joining us today on a much warmer day than yesterday. All right. Awesome. Got a few more people joining. Great. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Awesome. Got a few more. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this wonderful Thursday. We're so excited for you to be a part of this with us. This is part of our Recovery and Resilience program that we do with the Small Business Development Center. Today we're talking about updates from the city of Colorado Springs in regards to outdoor structures and winter outdoor seating. Onward. Let me tell you a little bit about the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center. What we do is we provide free consulting, practical training, and business resources for El Paso County and the Pikes Peak region. Really use our free consulting. I always say it's perfect for startups, also for businesses that have been around for a long time. We're a great resource in that regard. So especially during these hard times, to please reach out to us as we have excellent resources to provide for you. And of course, we couldn't do it without our sponsors. We have El Paso County Economic Development and Public Banking, the City of Colorado Springs, Park State Bank and Trust, CenturyLink, Colorado Springs Utilities, Spectra, and the SBA, which is Small Business Alliance, which we've been working with consistently for a very long time now. And so let me go ahead and introduce you to our panelists today. We've got an awesome group of individuals that I'm super excited to introduce you to today. We've got Chris Cooper, who's the Deputy Fire Marshal for the City of Colorado Springs and Fire Department, excuse me. Colin Gordon is the License Enforcement Officer for the City Clerk's Office. We also have Ryan Tiller, who is with Urban Planning of the City of Colorado Springs, and Sammy Jo Lawson, who is with El Paso County Health Department here. So we're going to go ahead and get started and kick it off right now. I'm going to go ahead and exit my screen and take it away. Chris, we're going to start with you as you talk about a little bit about outdoor dining and some of the cool websites and resources that you have here.
Well, welcome everyone. I know this is a difficult time for a lot of people, and I want you to know the Colorado Springs Fire Department is here to support you and make that process as streamlined as possible as you figure out solutions to increase your dining capacities or your business occupancies. The one thing that we want to do is partner with you and help identify resources and solutions for you that are going to be safe and code compliant. And so that's our number one goal. In order to do that, we are going to be issuing a free permit to anyone who's doing any type of modification to their business or providing outdoor seating arrangements or temporary structures. And so on our website, ColoradoSprings.Gov/fire, you'll see a link right in the middle that says Outdoor Dining Guide. And when you click on that, there'll be information that we've put together collectively as a city to include help with downtown partners. And so some of the members are here today with Ryan and Samantha, and Colin is certainly an important aspect of that as well. And so as a team, we want to make sure that we are guiding you down the right path and showing you all the things that you need to do to be safe in your adjustments. From a fire department standpoint, a couple of things that we are looking for specifically, obviously, if you're building a temporary structure, what does that look like? What materials are you using? Are you open on the sides from a health department standpoint to be considered outdoor seating versus indoor? We want to look at those materials and the flame spread ratings, the fire safety of those, whether it's a tent or an igloo or a frame structure that you build. We're going to review those materials, and so we can provide some guidance. We've seen a lot of creative ideas come through already. Obviously, we've seen the standard tents. We've seen some pergola designs come in. We're seeing discussion of use of shipping containers, and that's going to be a little bit more difficult right now because those would be considered indoor. But the point is we're open to whatever ideas are out there. There's been a lot of creative work done by many groups to come up with some solutions, and so we're here to help you and decide what's going to be the best option for you. In order to do that, we're going to need to see a site plan. Where's the temporary structure going to be set up? And obviously, Ryan with City Planning will talk more about that because they'll have some significant interest in that piece of it. We also want to look at what type of heating appliances are you using as we go into the winter months. That's going to be the most common question that we see. A lot of people are looking at propane heaters, which is great if we're in an open environment. If we're enclosing things, then we need to be a little bit more concerned about those propane type of heaters, not only from a clearance standpoint from fire safety, but also from a carbon monoxide type of concern. We're also seeing electric heaters proposed. Got to be real careful with those and make sure those are listed for the appropriate environment, indoor or outdoor. And so any submittals that come through our office for review, we're going to ask to see specification sheets, manufacturer's guidance on those heaters to where we can verify what they're listed for and provide some good guidance as far as how to best apply those within your space. Any permit that is applied for, we are going to grant that for 180 days. Per code, temporary is defined as 180 days, so we will issue a permit for that. Anything typically beyond that would be considered permanent and have to go through the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department for a building permit. We've had lots of conversation with the building department. We've coordinated that, and we've determined that we will do the initial 180-day permit, and with the ability to extend that another 180 days for up to a year total. And at the end of that year process, then you'd either need to remove that temporary structure or visit with the building department about what that looks like to make that a permanent structure. So trying to be as flexible as we can in that process. Really that's kind of the guidance and the general information we have. Feel free to contact me directly. I think Mackenzie's going to share our contact information with the group later. It's on that initial slide, isn't it, Mackenzie?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat and then follow up with that as well. And then Ryan, I'll kind of have you expand on some of what Chris has discussed. And also if you have any questions, to be sure put them kind of on that right-hand side where it says questions, and I'll be sure to field those as we go along. So Ryan, if you want to kind of talk to us about some of the outdoor dining and kind of what that entails and where they can find more information.
Sure. Thanks, Mackenzie. Ryan T. Fertiller, I'm the urban planning manager in the city's planning department. I think the first thing, and I think Mackenzie just shared her screen, the first thing I wanted everyone to be aware of is that the city setup was intended to be a one-stop shop, so to speak, for outdoor dining expansion. The website up here is ColoradoSprings.Gov /outdoor-dining. And on the page, there's information about temporary permits through the planning department. The next section there's a lot of what Chris was just talking about with temporary structures and heating of those temporary structures. There's a section that Colin will get to shortly regarding liquor license modifications. And then there's a bunch of contact information down at the bottom, including some information about the things that Sammy will talk about for county health department. And I will just point out, my email is down here at the bottom as well, ryan.tfertiller@ColoradoSprings.Gov. You guys are welcome to email me directly. So I'd obviously refer everyone to the website, but I will spend the next couple minutes giving you a little bit of an overview on some of the things that we're looking for, just kind of like what Chris just did for the fire department. First thing to understand is that most restaurants, most commercial areas have what's called a development plan. And the development plan is a document that allowed for the development of that property, the construction of the restaurant, the design of the parking lot, the landscaping, all those types of things. Usually when we talk about a restaurant expanding seating, we would require an amendment to that development plan. But given the situation that we're all in and trying to make things as easy as possible and support the challenges that restaurants are facing, we're not requiring those amendments at this point. What we are instead processing are temporary use applications or revocable permit applications. The two applications accomplish more or less the same thing. A temporary use application is used when you're using private property for that expanded seating area. A revocable permit is the correct application if you're using public right-of-way. I would think that most restaurants probably would end up using temporary use application, simply converting part of their parking area or landscape area into seating. That being said, a lot of the restaurants right downtown along Tejon or Pikes Peak, they're using revocable permits because they don't have private parking lots. Either application, a couple of key things to keep in mind. One, we obviously need the application with property owner signatures. It's very important that we get the signatures not only of the applicant or the restaurant manager, whoever's facilitating the application, but we also need a property owner signature. As Chris mentioned, we need a site plan, and the site plan can really vary. Normally, if you're talking about developing land, we have someone using CAD software and survey data to put together a very formal plan. We're trying to keep things as informal as possible. We've accepted everything from just a hand-drawn sketch. We've gotten a lot of folks that have printed off a Google aerial photo from Google Maps and just drawn on with a marker where they want the seating. We've even had folks just take a photograph of the area in question and just use your computer software to sketch just or even hand draw on a printed version of the photograph where you want the seating. The key is we want to know where the seating is, and we want dimensions of the seating. So if it's 20 feet by 45 feet, that should be labeled on the plan. A lot of folks are giving us a little narrative as well, a paragraph or so describing how big the area is, where it's located, how many tables they envision within the area. That can be helpful as well. Just like the fire department, just like Chris mentioned, we are not collecting fees for these applications. Normally there would be a $100 to $200 fee for these types of applications, but we're processing them free of charge. The initial review takes between 1 and 5 business days. Most, especially if you're just using private property, we're doing those reviews in really one to 2 days. And as long as the site plan has the necessary information, we're approving those as quickly as possible. Another key thing to keep in mind is typically when you have a restaurant, the city has parking standards. So depending on your use and the size of your building, city zoning code requires a certain number of parking stalls to be provided specific to that use. Restaurants have a 1 per 100 requirement. So for every 100 square feet of restaurant space, you're supposed to have 1 parking stall dedicated to your business. Normally, when we review the expansion of a dining area, even if it is outdoor dining area, we're going to look at how many parking stalls you have and how many you need. We're not doing that during the pandemic. Specific to these applications, we have waived our parking requirements, allowing sometimes significant temporary expansion for outdoor dining areas, even if you don't have the number of parking stalls that the zoning code would normally require. Obviously, that's justifiable because you're not able to have as many customers per 100 square feet inside your restaurant. Right now, you can't have really any inside your restaurant. So we're just confident that the parking that you are providing will be adequate given the significant decrease in the number of customers you can have on site. One little comment about ADA. We've had a lot of folks that kind of question about the need for accessible tables or access. Sometimes these seating areas are in landscaped areas. They're not flat. Might be steps or a curb that need to be done. We are not reviewing that. We're not saying specifically you need to have all your outdoor dining areas be ADA compliant. However, we are very clearly communicating in our approval letters that it's the operator's responsibility to comply with the ADA. And oftentimes that can be done with permanent. If you have a small initial patio, it's a small outdoor seating area, typically that is ADA compliant, and therefore your new temporary expansion doesn't need to be. But again, it's just something to be aware of. The city can provide some guidance and support if you have questions about ADA and whether the temporary seating that you've designed or that you're proposing is compliant. We can provide some advice, but we're really not reviewing that as part of these temporary applications. Our approvals are valid through October 1st of 2021. So that obviously exceeds the fire department's 180 days. That's almost a year. And some of these approvals we were doing all through the spring and summer. So our approvals are good for until October 1st, 2021. But you have to continue to work with the fire department and others if you are exceeding their limitations. If we have had some folks that have seen a lot of success from their outdoor dining areas, like through the summer, and the desire to make them permanent, that may be an option. However, there would be other applications. So I'd say if you acquire a bunch of tables, if you acquire a bunch of heaters, whatever it is, that may not be wasted come October of 21, but you would need to work with a planner and potentially process a different type of application to make those permanent should you want to keep them after October of 2021. I think the last thing I have on my list here was liquor license and how the planning department coordinates with the city clerk's office. And then I'll kind of transition to Colin, and he can go into a little bit more depth. If we're processing a temporary use application or a revocable permit application, and we know that restaurant has a liquor license, I'll be communicating with Colin and Lee and the folks in the city clerk's office, letting them know that we're processing this application. When you do work with Colin and actually submit a plan to modify your liquor license, they route those plans back to the city planning office, and we make sure that what you've submitted to the clerk's office matches what we've approved in the planning department. So there are kind of parallel processes. There are applications needed to both the planning department and the city clerk's office, but we're doing everything we can to coordinate and make sure that we're all reading from the same sheet of music. We're all seeing the same plan, and we're making sure that those liquor licenses match up to the temporary approvals that we've done. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Colin, and obviously I'm happy to answer any questions should they come up. And I'd again refer you to my email address on the city's website, and you're welcome to email me if you have specific questions as well.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. Colin, that's a good transition if you want to kind of talk to us a little bit about the liquor and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Ryan for his in-depth layout of the process for planning, and Chris for the fire department as well. Of course, as they said, we're all kind of partner agencies in this. The liquor licensing piece of this is, I would say, not overly onerous, but one thing that's unique and different between the fire and the land use is that liquor licenses, as you know, are dual jurisdictional. So there is a state component to this as well as a city component. So in order to get your temporary outdoor space approved, not only do you need a local approval, but you also need state approval as well. The process is pretty simple. On our website, ColoradoSprings.Gov/liquor, there is a temporary modification, frequently asked questions page. In there, there's the elements of a complete application for liquor license purposes, which is the permit app and report of changes. It's a premises of the new area diagram, that has certain stringent requirements that need to be met. Those are laid out in the frequently asked questions. You'll need a landlord's permission letter, of course, unless you own the property or if it's a revocable permit because you're in the right of way. But if you're going to be, for saying, using the parking lot, you would need permission from the landlord to use that premises. And then the final element of it would be a control plan. Again, within that temporary modification frequently asked questions, there's a bulletin on page 2. There's a link to that, which is put out by the Liquor Enforcement Division, 2008. If you click that link, they will give you the email and the payment portal for you to apply directly to the state. Timing wise, it's a pretty quick turnaround as far as the state and city clerk's office is concerned. Of course, you know, we have our partner agencies in land use and fire. Our suggestion is that you would certainly go to Ryan T. Fertiller and planning first, and then kind of simultaneously apply at the state and pay the $150 fee. The city does not have a fee for the liquor licensing portion of this. Also, what's a little bit different than our permanent modifications is there's no hearing requirement for these temporary modifications, which you would typically have if you're going to have a permanent modification. And kind of to piggyback on what Ryan was saying, if people are enjoying this and they want to make it permanent, they will have to reapply and go through a permanent modification, which would also trigger a hearing in front of a hearing officer here locally. Yeah, I think, you know, once you apply at the state, we ask that you copy me on the email, and I can make sure that Mackenzie gives everyone my email address. That way we can be working that application concurrently as the state is looking over that application. I mean, we have seen a fairly quick turnaround, sometimes even 24 to 48 hours from the state. So once we get that from the state and once we receive the approval from land use and from fire, then we are able to issue local approval, issue the permit that the state has sent to us, and then you'd be able to use your outdoor dining area. And that's pretty much sums it up for the liquor licensing piece of this.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the website too?
Sure. So yeah, so if you're looking at the top of the page, you'll see a link there for the temporary modification frequently asked question. That's where you'll find all of the information as far as the elements of the complete application. It's right towards the top of the page if you stop, Kenzie.
Sure.
Yep, right there near where your cursor is. And in there, in that bulletin on page 2 is a link to a document that the state sent out, which has their link for payment to their payment portal. It has their email address where you submit the application, and also everything that you need to keep in mind for the elements of a complete application. If you scroll a little bit down towards the middle of the page, a little bit more, you'll see it says liquor. There's a link for a liquor and beer report of changes. That is the state form, the DR 8442. That is the application, state application. The city doesn't have an application for the city clerk's office like we would with a normal liquor license. For these temporary, for modifications, it's a state-only document, and you can find that document right there. So really, it's that document, the diagram, a permission letter, a control plan, and the $150 directly, all going directly to the state with me copied on that email so that I can send the proper internal review documents to planning, land use, and fire so that we can issue local approval.
Awesome. Great. And Ryan, do you mind kind of speaking to, I was going to pull this up beforehand, but where people can find this information before we get to Sammy Joe?
The document that you have there is, there's a link to that on the outdoor dining, the Colorado Springs / outdoor dining page as well. So yeah, what we've tried to do is just summarize it all in one two-page handout. And it kind of tries to summarize everything that Colin, myself, Chris, and Samantha are all talking about under one PDF.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Thank you so much. And that leads us right into Sammy Joe. Sammy Joe, I'm hoping you can kind of speak to some of the expectations in regards to restaurants and seating with El Paso County Public Health and some of the changes that have happened in the last few weeks, or any updates that we need to be aware of moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. And hello, everyone. So the biggest piece to keep in mind as far as getting your expanded outdoor seating for public health is you do need to fill out an application form, which is located on our website. And I know Mackenzie can pull that up in a second, but we tried to make it as easy as possible. So at the very top, if you click environmental health, the drop down, then you'll want to hit is retail food, which will bring you to this page. You scroll down a little bit, the very top of the retail food section, sorry, down a little further, I apologize. That'll show you our COVID-19 resources. So the very first form on there is the one that we just showed, that was our agency partner form. And that has, again, everything that you've heard from Ryan and Colin and Chris. That two-page document is the first one on there. The second is important because it shows the outdoor dining structures from CDPHE. So this is what we use as a definition of what's considered indoor versus outdoor. So even though you're making a tent outside or some sort of a structure, it's really important to know that now that indoor dining is no longer allowed. If you're going to have a structure with 4 walls, you're essentially creating an indoor space placed outside. So if that's the case, then we just need to make sure if you're putting more than one group into that structure, you have to still meet the definition of outdoors, which means if it's a tent, you need to have 2 walls that are not adjacent to each other open so that you create that funnel and airflow that's going to push through there. So the goal is that you would have open outdoor airflow. The nice thing about this guide is it does give you a few different scenarios. So the first one is 4 walls and a ceiling. That's still considered indoors. So these definitions still apply to new structures that you're putting outside. You'll notice the very bottom talks about a single party structure. So if you had a teepee, an igloo, some sort of structure that you're only putting one group in, less than 10 people, and they're one party, same household now is the other key element to the new level red requirements. They have to be same household. If that's the case, you can still use it, but only for that one party, because again, it doesn't have that open airflow in order for it to qualify as an outdoor seating structure with multiple parties on it. Another key piece to keep in mind, I get a lot of questions on, is, well, what if I have, one part of my existing restaurant where I have these huge garage doors that open up fully? Can that qualify as an outdoor space? The answer is sometimes it can. And again, every restaurant is so different. So it's actually really helpful to me when you get into our application, which we'll go back to our retail food page here. When you get to our application, that you go ahead and specify what that looks like. So it looks like it is, yes, that one there. So this is our fillable PDF, and this is where you're going to put in all of your information and help me understand whether it's a structure or an existing space, what you're looking for us to approve for your outdoor seating. And I even have people that will submit videos or pictures, and that's great too. So this whole form, once you fill it out, has to be emailed to our COVID business recovery. at elpasoco.com. And so that shows you right up at the top of the page. And when you email that, you can include those videos or pictures. A lot of restaurants have my information, which is great. So if you want to send it to me directly, that's fine too. I openly share that my cell phone number on my memos that I sent out and all of that fun too. And if you have just a general question and for some reason, you don't get a hold of me in a timely fashion, please keep in mind we do have that COVID-19 call line set up in my department where we do have staff that are monitoring that. So if you can't get a hold of me directly, please do call that COVID line. And that is 719-578-3167, and we'd be happy to help you there. Lastly, on this page, I want to point you to the last PDF, which is a quick reference guide. So what I tried to do here is because our website has a lot of great information, but it becomes really challenging to navigate back and forth between the section guidance as well as what to do in the case of an outbreak. And so I try to put all of those different links in this one document for you. So if you can kind of scroll through these different headers and figure out what information you're looking for, it's all here. And the last part of this document also has some links for financial assistance as well. So I know locally with the small business, there's some great resources there. Colorado Restaurant Association, they've opened up their resources completely. So you do not have to be a member in order to benefit from their services. So you can get anything from free legal counsel with COVID to some grant funding for outdoor dining. So I really encourage you to utilize this resource guide just to help you navigate a little better. And as a couple examples that I get is a TP, which again, it has enclosed walls. Unless there was two openings opposite of each other to create that tunnel, that would be considered a single party structure. Another one I get is igloos, which again, you would have to have openings opposite of each other or it'd be one group that would be in that at a time. So I hope that helps answer some of the main questions I get, but by all means, I'll take your questions once we get to that.
Yeah, we'll start. We've got a few, so I'll just kind of start and you guys can kind of speak to these things. So if we already have an outside patio, do we have to get an approval for a propane heater to be placed in the patio? No tent.
If it's not enclosed, then you don't need to have a permit for that outdoor patio heater. Just make sure you're following the manufacturer's recommendations for clearances from the structure, and you should be good to go.
And then we have another question about heaters. So do you have recommendations of heaters that are affordable, eco-friendly? Is there a place where people can kind of reference those items somewhere?
We don't. We try and avoid giving any type of referral or reference on specific products, but just search for outdoor patio heaters, things that are listed for outdoor enclosures. You specifically want to look at clearances to combustibles, and that's not only to the side, but also to the top. A lot of the manufacturer's recommendations do say do not use them in enclosed spaces or where there's coverings over the top. And so we can evaluate that on a case by case. And if your ceiling height is high enough, if you have a covered patio, then we can work with you on that and make sure that you don't have the issues of clearance and heat put off by that heater. Electric heaters, again, just be very careful that you're grabbing something that's listed for an outdoor use, especially when we're talking these semi-covered environments, when we're not completely enclosed. Moisture and electricity don't do well together, so you want to avoid anything that's going to create an issue for you that way.
Great. I think to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying is just, how do we determine, can we have heaters underneath, a structure, or how does that work? Can somebody come out and tell us that, or how do they determine those things?
Yeah, you can contact me directly. Again, my contact information will be shared, but the easiest way is chris.cooper@ColoradoSprings.Gov. Chris, it's spelled K-R-I-S. And if you send that to me, I can take a look at the material that you send me, and we can help decide if that product's going to work for your application or not.
Awesome. It's probably for you, Sammy Joe. Do you have recommendations of people that install tents or coverings, or how, in order to save money and time? Is there a place they can go to just reference someplace directly?
Great question. So actually, there was a work group that was done about a month ago or so that was put on by the Colorado Restaurant Association, and it involved some fire department experts, local public health, architects, and some restaurant owners. And so if you go onto the Colorado Restaurant Association's website, you can find the results of that work group. So what's really cool is we got all the right players in the room, and we discussed some options for outdoor dining that gives you those parameters of what would still be considered an outdoor space because of that correct airflow. So there's some examples for sidewalks and parking lots, even some the communities and ski resorts where they get heavier snow, so they have other considerations to think about. So there's some already populated examples. It even gives you the material list that you would need if you wanted to build it. And one idea that I sat on the sidewalk one, and we basically used a greenhouse. So just like a small greenhouse you would put at your house or the back of your restaurant, you could essentially turn that into a single indoor space, and because it's smaller, it could fit a little easier in those sidewalk areas. But of course, remember that would have to be done in conjunction with Ryan's team and Colin's team and Chris in order to make sure each of those other pieces are still meeting requirements. But that's a great kickoff point if you want to start with that package.
Can you tell me again where they can find that? I'm going to put that in the chat.
Sure. As we move on, I'll see if I can find the exact link because I know CRA's website's a little hard to navigate. So let me see if I can find that for you.
Okay.
1 second.
Awesome. That's great. This one's probably for you, Colin. So they're talking about like liquor outside their space. So like they don't necessarily have a patio, if they have a sidewalk, or if they have an alleyway. So can you kind of speak to, can we just assume those spaces, or do you need approval of those spaces, or what does that look like?
Yeah, if it's anything other than what your currently licensed premises is, you will need to apply for a temporary modification permit. Something I should also say as well is that with these temporary outdoor areas, for liquor licensing purposes, the only individuals that are allowed to be bringing liquor from the restaurant to outside are the servers, are the employees. Now, I know that currently the indoor dining is closed, and it would, of course, there wouldn't be an opportunity for someone to get a drink at a bar and then walk it out. But if we go from red back to orange, or we go, to the good, they would still not be able to do that. So liquor service will only be allowed by employees from the currently licensed premises to the presumptive applied for and approved outdoor area. Does that answer the question?
It does for me, so I'll see if it does.
Oh, and Mackenzie, I realized that I did update my resource guide to have that link in there. So I just double checked myself on our website that it is on there. So if you go to that resource guide at the very bottom where it listed financial resources and support, it's listed there to the link to the CRA for that toolkit.
Awesome.
Hey, Mackenzie, could I jump in on this last question as well? In downtown Colorado Springs, there are very few restaurants that have significant private parking lots. So we've had to be pretty creative with allowing temporary outdoor dining areas downtown. We have allowed kind of a narrow area along the edge of an alley. So that might be an area where you could have like 2 top tables right up against the face of a building, and that alley can still be used for deliveries and trash service and anything else. We've approved some outdoor dining areas in the space like right next to parking meters, like between the sidewalk and the curb. We've allowed, like Phantom Canyon has a pretty good example of a number of tables out in that type of area. And we have done a few approvals of what we call parklets, where we've actually worked with the city's parking enterprise to repurpose a metered parking stall and allow tables to sit and diners to dine where normally a car would be parked at a parking meter. And in fact, I will give the Downtown Partnership and the Downtown Development Authority a little plug. They are in the process of doing a grant program where they will award up to 6 $1,000 grants to restaurants within the downtown area, within the DDA, to create a parklet. And that cost is largely needed because of the slope of the roadway makes it difficult for diners to sit there unless you build some sort of platform. So we are supporting that as well. The last thing I'd say, as far as the specific person that asked that question, is we have approved a few revocable permits for areas in front of adjacent businesses. For instance, Red Gravy and Jack Quinn's worked with their neighbor property owner, the USOC building, and got permission to add additional tables and seating just the next door down. Normally, we require the seating to be directly in front of the restaurant, but we have allowed a few cases where, with the coordination and support of a neighbor business, an office or apartment building, whatever it may be, we've allowed those sidewalk dining areas to expand, to the adjacent space. So we're trying to look outside the box, and we're trying to be as supportive as possible for these temporary dining areas that maybe we wouldn't normally support on a permanent basis.
That's helpful. If things change, orange or purple, what changes in regards to, does anything need to change, like reapplication processes, or how does that work as dials change?
If that's for me, no, it wouldn't change as far as reapplying. Was that aimed at a particular one of us?
I'll say on the planning department, nothing would change. However, there's a little bit of an asterisk to that. Hopefully, next summer or at some point, we completely go off the dial or back to normal pre-pandemic. And if that occurs before October 1st of 2021, we have said that our temporary free of charge permits would expire 30 days after all those capacity limits are completely lifted. So that gives you still some time to kind of phase out these temporary dining areas, in that 30 days. But the whole point of our program to support these was to address the capacity limits that restaurants have on indoor dining. And so if those capacity limits are eliminated entirely, our expectation would be that the temporary outdoor dining areas go away as well, unless you've made submit a different application to make them permanent.
Got it.
Mackenzie, from the fire department standpoint, if you take an open area and you enclose it, maybe we're able to go back to somewhat of an indoor dining application. And so that temporary structure that's open on both ends, and you decide to enclose that for better heat and things like that. Should we be able to have indoor dining, then we'd want to see those modifications to that temporary structure to make sure that we're not impacting exiting, that our heating arrangements are still okay, that any products are used to enclose that are going to be safe from a fire perspective.
Great.
And for the liquor licensing piece of that question, no, there wouldn't be kind of an additional application if the restrictions are eased, if the dial goes from red to orange. And but for liquor licensing, if people are allowed back inside the restaurant, each of those levels on the dial has specific times that they have to stop serving liquor, both indoor and takeout, associated with each dial.
Got it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Colin. I just wanted to add to that. I do get a lot of questions on that liquor time piece, and it is for on-site consumption. So I get a lot of questions about, oh, so I can't buy beer now at the convenience store or the liquor store. But the difference is the on-site consumption. So that would be specific to bars and restaurant where you're consuming that at the facility.
That's great. Helpful. Another question, if I have permanent 4 walls but no roof with a heater, is there a minimum floor space?
No, so not for me, so long as it's one party in there. As long as you're not trying to put more than one group in there, I wouldn't care how big the space is. Do keep in mind though, you'd want to, air that out between seatings. So between the different customers, you just want to let that air escape while you're disinfecting the table and such, and then you could seat the next group.
Anybody else want to speak to that one?
I can't think of anything from fire department standpoint.
Let's see. All right, if you already have an existing patio, you want to partially enclose it with a tent. Tent is a solid on 2 sides, and 1 side is open and the 4th is a partially open but vented. Would this qualify for a temporary outside seating?
That's one that would be helpful to go through that application process with you, so that when you say it's vented, it really depends on how much. And then my next question that I would want you to include in that application is, are you looking to seat, again, multiple people? And is it fully, the walls go all the way down to the bottom of your patio, or is it one of those kind of half walls? So anything like that would be really helpful for me to better understand. And again, sometimes it's just as simple as taking a picture or video and including that in your email, because it helps just give me a better picture of what you're looking at.
Yeah, and this one's for you again, Sammy Jo. Like yesterday when we discussed this, curious about the 5-star program that the state is discussing, and can you speak to that and the timeline of that and what that looks like?
Absolutely. So I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, unfortunately. So just to clear a few things that I'm hearing is currently Mesa County is the only county with a 5-star award program. Even though we at El Paso County Public Health have tried to mirror that program and call it a gold medal program to kind of echo us as the Olympic city, and tried to implement and ask the state if we could do something like that. The state has come back and said at this time they're not allowing any counties in level red or orange to apply for such a program. But because they have been inundated by these requests from other counties as well, they are now developing a statewide framework for essentially that 5-star program or model to say if a restaurant or businesses could meet this certain criteria, they would be allowed to operate at a higher capacity. So Mesa County is the only one currently doing it, and because of that, they're also using them as a data study. So they're actually digging into their data to find out where is this 5-star program working? Is it not working? And they've applied it across businesses. So they're also trying to find out, is it restaurants or which business is associated with more of these outbreaks, to better understand if this program is a good idea across the state. Once they get those details figured out, I will always shoot that out to every restaurant I have on my contact list, as I always do with my memos. And please know that right now it is open for public opinion, and that closes tomorrow. So if you have an interest, if you want to see what that draft framework looks like, please go to CDPHE's website and you could type in that 5-star, and I'm sure it'll pop up. But that's where we're at right now, is it's still in draft form. They're trying to get public opinion and comment before we'll find out anything further on a timeline for that.
Awesome, that's great, Sammy Jo.
Hey, Mackenzie, could I jump back to your last question real quick? I think if your restaurant has an existing patio that that your liquor license applies to, you've always had tables and serve diners out on your patio, yet you now, given capacity limitations and cold weather, you want to install a tent and and keep your diners warm with heaters or even if it's just the tent structure. I don't think in this scenario you have to work with the planning department or with the clerk's office with Colin, because you've already got approval to use that physical space as dining and consumption area. You would, however, need to work with Sammy and Chris to make sure that that proposed structure, the tent or whatever it is, bubble, meets their standards and needs. The one kind of qualifier I'll put on that though is if your outdoor seating area is in the public right of way, so say you're on Tejon Street and you have a patio space that you want to put a tent or two in, then there should be some communication with myself, with the planning department, because it is in the public right of way. We just want to make sure that that tent isn't too close to power lines or doesn't in some way put the public at risk. We want to make sure it's strapped down, it's going to be safe, that type of thing. But outside of that scenario, if you're just a kind of a more typical restaurant with a approved patio already, you really wouldn't need to work with the planning department or the clerk's office just to add a tent.
And I'll echo that 100%. For liquor licensing purposes, it's really about your currently licensed premises. And if there's anything that you're contemplating adding either adjacent to the face of the building, or in the case that Ryan spoke of, Red Gravy and Jack Quinn's both currently have licensed patios on Tejon Street, but they wanted to add an additional area slightly down in the next building in front of the USOC. And so they applied for and received temporary modification permits to do so. But liquor licensing doesn't think about or consider roofs or sides or anything like that. There's some things you consider with a permanent liquor licenses, but as far as these temporaries are concerned, that would be more the the purview of the fire department or the health department.
Correct. Any structure modifications, anything that you're going to build, we want to take a look at that. And again, it's, we turn that around as quick as we can. It's a free permit, but we want to make sure that we're working with the business to make sure things are safe for their customers.
And I just wanted to add, because I don't know if I said it before, but we don't charge a fee either for our application. So sorry if I didn't make that clear, but just know that, just like everyone you're hearing on this call, we want to try and make the process as easy as possible. So there's no added fee for our application either.
All right, it looks like we've got one more here. It's for you, Sammy Joe. Are there any restrictions in regards to like takeout and delivery? When it comes to like retail or restaurants, is there any difference, especially with the timeline? Can you deliver or take out later than what's posted on the El Paso County Health site? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So from the food standpoint, there's no time limit at all on when you can deliver food, and nothing changes from what it was before. You can always still do takeout delivery. One question to that you might be getting to, and just in case I'll elaborate, I get asked, oh, well, do I have to bring the food out to customers, or can they still come in just to grab their food and go? And the answer is yes. So you can absolutely have customers come into your establishment to grab that to-go order or to place the to-go order. That is completely fine. You can also walk them through your establishment to get to an outdoor patio or an outdoor seating area. For example, if you have multiple levels to your restaurant, you can also walk them through and upstairs to get to that second level patio. All of that is fine. We just want to make sure that you're not physically dining inside the restaurant. So that's one question I forgot to mention that I do get a lot. And from the liquor side, I'll let Colin speak to that, but I know there is a little bit of a time difference on the liquor to go, correct, Colin?
Yes, there is. Again, the Liquor Enforcement Division has attached times to each level of restriction that we have. And, I think if you go to the Colorado Department of Revenue Liquor Licensing Division, and maybe even on your El Paso County Health Department's website, should be able to get what each level of the dial means and what that lays out, not only for liquor licensing purposes, but for indoor dining, as far as churches and everything else, and what the restrictions are.
Yeah, and I believe currently in level red, it says that on-site consumption for alcohol ends at 8, but I believe you can do takeout till 10. Like there's a very little nuance in there. And absolutely call myself and my team if we can help, because Colin, you're a great resource, and also my team, we are just, all into that public health order and the nuances and how that applies across different areas. So we can also help you navigate as those levels change what is specified in the public health order as well.
Yeah, and I'll echo the other panelists. Phone is always there, email is always there, willing to answer any questions. And, we've gotten some fairly outside the box thinking, which I think COVID really calls for. And we try to do what we can to work with everyone and to make sure we can have options for local businesses.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. So appreciative. I'm going to quick share a resource that the Pikes Peak SBDC put together here recently called Bundle Up for Small Businesses. We've kind of partnered and tried to marry OEDIT's and the state's Shop Local campaign, as well as the city's Small Acts Big Impact campaign. So this is our Bundle Up for Small Businesses. You can find this on the Pikes Peak SBDC website at pikespeaksbdc.org. It's a great resources for businesses, just like we were talking with everybody here today. They all have great links. A lot of those you can find here. We're most proud of our cold weather toolkit. So this is a living organism, as we know, in our COVID fatigue, that we're also always being inundated with information. So we've got lots of really good information here. The dial, the CRA giving us good, awesome information here. Straight Talk, we've got awesome marketing information that you can use. We're getting window decals and signs currently for our small businesses to promote. We've just finished our 5-gallery video series. So we've got these really awesome tips for small businesses. So we've got HR tips, public health tips, there you are, Sammy Joe, disease prevention refreshers. We've got 5 mental health tips for employers that's coming and uploading later this week, as well as 5 marketing tips in like e-commerce and those types of things. We're also working on a series right now called Bundle Up Stories. So we're kind of marrying 14 photographers in the Teller County and El Paso County area and talking a little bit about resiliency and hospitality and why that's so important, especially in the last 8 months. So these are really great stories with pictures here. So we were able to get a grant underwriter to help support our creative teams and businesses here as well. So this is a great resource. So I'll put this in the follow-up, as well as everybody's information that was a part of this today. Thank you, Colin and Ryan and Chris and Sammy Joe. Is there anything else you want to add before we head out? Yeah. Awesome.
I'll just say that apparently everyone else gave their email address, so I'll do the same. And I know that you will be giving in my signature line for my emails. I have my email address, my direct line as well, but it's colin.gordon@ColoradoSprings.Gov. That's Colin with 1 L, Gordon spelled as you would presume that it is. And my direct line is 719-385-5107. And I'd love to hear from anybody who has any questions.
I guess you triggered something I wanted to say, so thank you. I do send out memos, as I mentioned, to all the restaurants and retail food establishments that we have currently on file. So if you recently took over a business or you changed your email, if you're not getting an email from me, please just reach out to us so I can update that distribution list. I am Samantha Lawson at elpasoco.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, this is being recorded, so everybody on this call will receive this recording, as well as all of your information and the great wealth of resources that you all have put together. So thank you again for taking the time, each of you, for the last hour to answer these questions as we navigate these unprecedented times, or the word that I hate the most, pivot, but here we are doing it. So anyway, take care, everybody. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you all for your time.
Bye.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye.